Deep within the vast, uncharted reaches of space, there lies a phenomenon so powerful, so mysterious, that even the bravest of minds have trembled in fear at its mention: the black hole. To most, it is an enigma, a place where time and space collide, where the very fabric of reality is stretched beyond comprehension. To those who dare seek its truth, it is both a promise of ultimate knowledge and the potential for eternal oblivion. Dr. Alistair Graves, one of the leading astrophysicists of his generation, stood in the observation room of the Artemis, a cutting-edge spacecraft designed for deep space exploration. The stars outside glimmered like tiny jewels in an infinite expanse, but the calm serenity of the cosmos was deceiving. Ahead of them, a massive anomaly loomed, a black hole, one unlike any ever encountered before. The Artemis had been traveling for years, its mission a singular, near impossible task: to unlock the secrets of a supermassive black hole at the edge of the known universe. This was no ordinary mission, no ordinary black hole. The anomaly, named Event Horizon by the crew, was unlike any theoretical model. It wasn't just large, it was ancient. In fact, it had been there long before the first stars were born, a silent observer to the birth and death of galaxies. The crew of the Artemis had always known the risks. They had prepared themselves for everything: the dangerous radiation, the cosmic storms, the intense gravity. But nothing had prepared them for what they would discover once they crossed the event horizon. "We're approaching the boundary," Dr. Graves muttered, staring at the screen before him. His eyes reflected the pale glow of the black hole's accretion disk, a swirling maelstrom of gas and matter being torn apart by the monster's gravity. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to turn back, to abandon this journey. Yet, the pull of the unknown was irresistible. The promise of knowledge. "Dr. Graves," Captain Nadia Sullivan's voice crackled over the intercom. "Are we sure about this? Once we cross, there's no turning back." Graves didn't look up from the screen. His voice was steady, almost emotionless. "We've studied it for years. The data points to an anomaly inside the black hole itself, a place where the laws of physics break down. This is our only chance to uncover what lies beyond." Sullivan hesitated, but nodded. She trusted Graves, but even she had her doubts. The event horizon was a place where not even light could escape. And beyond it? Beyond. It lay something no one had ever returned from. But for Graves, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. An opportunity to answer the most fundamental questions of the universe. What is the true nature of space? What secrets did black holes hide? And most terrifyingly, what happens when you cross the line between known reality and the unknown? The Artemis crept closer. The ship's engines hummed softly, but the vibrations were enough to feel in the pit of one's stomach. The black hole's pull was growing stronger, distorting the fabric of space around them. The stars seemed to stretch, warping in the gravitational field. In that moment, the crew felt the overwhelming weight of the universe bearing down on them. "Dr. Graves," Captain Sullivan spoke again. "Are you sure this is what you want? Are we ready to face what lies beyond?" Graves finally looked up, his face grim. "There's no way to be truly ready, but we have to know. If we don't cross this line, we'll never understand the most fundamental truths of existence. We can't let fear hold us back." And with that, the Artemis crossed the event horizon. As the Artemis crossed the event horizon, everything around them seemed to distort, as if reality itself was being bent. Time, once a steady and reliable force, began to warp. The familiar ticking of the ship's clock slowed, like an old grandfather clock winding down. Gravity pulled at the ship in unnatural directions, forcing the crew to brace themselves against the disorienting shifts. "We've crossed it," Dr. Graves whispered, a note of awe in his voice. He knew they had entered a place where no human had ever ventured. His pulse quickened with excitement, but fear lurked just below the surface. Everything was unknown now. Everything. Adjusting gravitational fields, the ship's AI, Ether, chimed in, its calm voice a steady presence amidst the chaos. Engaging stabilizers. We are now within the singularity's influence. Sensors are being affected. Sullivan gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. The black hole's gravitational pull was far greater than anticipated. The ship was being torn in ways they hadn't accounted for, each second feeling like an eternity. And yet, there was no turning back. "Can we still communicate with the outside world?" Sullivan asked, her voice tight with worry. Ether's voice answered, its tone slightly altered as the interference increased. "Negative. The radio signals are too distorted to maintain contact with Earth. We are completely isolated." "Of course we are," muttered Sullivan under her breath, her eyes flickering to the display. The outside view was no longer the serene starscape they had come from. The universe beyond was a swirling mass of light and shadow, an incomprehensible whirlpool of cosmic energy. Dr. Graves, Commander Elias Holt, the ship's head of security, spoke up. He was a man of few words, but there was an underlying tension in his voice. "Is there any way we can predict what happens next? The ship is holding together, but it won't for long if this keeps up." Graves turned his attention to the screen, his brow furrowing. The data streaming in was like nothing he had ever seen. The normal laws of physics were breaking down, and the algorithms he had used for years seemed useless in this environment. The black hole's singularity was so dense that it stretched the very fabric of space-time, and it was pulling everything toward it with a force so great that even light could not escape. Theories suggest that within a black hole, space-time becomes unstable, Graves said quietly, his fingers flying over the console. "We're seeing it in real time. If we continue, the fabric of the universe may unravel. Time might cease to exist as we know it." "Time might cease to exist?" Commander Holt echoed, his voice laced with disbelief. "Are you telling me we're on the edge of a paradox?" Graves didn't respond immediately, his eyes glued to the rapidly changing data. In the distance, a strange glow began to form. Like a beacon within the darkness, a swirling vortex of light, twisted and bent in impossible shapes. "We're witnessing something no one has ever seen," Graves said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's ahead is unknown. But it's not just the singularity we have to worry about anymore. It's what's beyond it." Before he could finish, the ship's systems flared with a sudden surge of energy. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines grew louder, more intense. Ether's calm voice broke through the chaos. "Warning, unstable quantum fluctuations detected. Probability of entering a dimensional rift, 72.4%. "A dimensional rift," Holt repeated, his voice edged with fear. "What does that mean? Are we going to get sucked into some kind of alternate universe?" Graves's heart raced as he scanned the data. Dimensional rifts were theoretical, a crossing of boundaries between parallel universes, an impossible tear in space-time. No one knew if they were real, and no one knew what could happen if they were crossed. But the Artemis was now heading straight toward one. "We might be seeing the edge of the multiverse," Graves said, awe creeping into his voice. "A place where multiple realities collide. If we're pulled in, we may not ever return. Or we may find ourselves in a reality entirely different from our own." The ship lurched violently, and a sharp pain shot through Graves's skull as the ship's field stabilizers struggled against the forces at play. The crew braced themselves as everything around them seemed to twist, stretch, and crack. Then it happened. A burst of blinding light filled the observation window, so intense it forced the crew to shield their eyes. The Artemis was no longer in the blackness of space. Instead, they were surrounded by a maelstrom of energy, a swirling nebula of colors and shapes they couldn't possibly describe. as if the very essence of the universe itself had been shattered and scattered into an impossible kaleidoscope. "Where are we?" Sullivan asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's alarm systems. Graves stared in disbelief. The instruments around him flickered erratically, unable to process the data they were receiving. It was as if they had crossed into another realm entirely. "I don't know," Graves whispered, his voice trembling. This isn't our universe anymore." For a moment all was silent. Then the ship's AI, Ether, spoke again. But this time, there was an odd distortion in its voice. "Warning, temporal anomalies detected. Probability of encountering alternate realities, 98.7%. The Artemis had entered a new frontier. They had crossed beyond the singularity and into the heart of the unknown, a place where time, space, and reality were no longer constants. The crew now had a choice: continue their journey into this chaotic and dangerous dimension, or attempt to return to the universe they knew, assuming they could ever find their way back. As the ship drifted deeper into this strange new realm, Dr. Graves made his decision. This was why they had come, to discover the ultimate truth of existence, no matter the cost, and so they ventured forward. The Artemis drifted into a dimension unlike any other, its hull groaning under the strain of the unseen forces. Outside, the cosmic storm they had entered roiled and twisted, swirling with impossible colors and patterns. Time here was fractured. One moment it seemed to stand still, and the next, it sped forward at a dizzying pace. On the bridge, the crew was silent, each member lost in their thoughts as they tried to process the enormity of what was happening. "This isn't just another dimension," Graves said, his voice reverberating with the realization. "This is the heart of the multiverse, a place where countless realities overlap and merge, a place where the very fabric of existence is thin." Captain Sullivan stood at the viewport, her eyes wide with the shock of what they were seeing. "We're in a realm where every possibility, every alternate version of the universe, exists simultaneously. That means, if we aren't careful, we could run into ourselves." Graves nodded gravely. "It's possible, but we can't focus on that right now. We need to find a way to navigate through this chaos, to find the truth of what lies at the center of it all." Suddenly, Ether's voice broke through the stillness. "Warning, incoming gravitational anomaly detected. Anomalous energy readings suggest the presence of a massive entity." The crew turned to face the screens, their hearts pounding in unison. Something was approaching them, something massive, something that did not belong in this reality. The Artemis hung suspended in the middle of the chaotic maelstrom, its engines sputtering as they struggled to maintain any kind of direction. "Doctor," Graves stared at the approaching anomaly, his mind racing. Whatever it was unlike anything the crew had ever studied, an entity whose presence warped the very space around it. "Brace for impact!" Captain Sullivan shouted, her voice rising above the increasingly erratic beeping of the ship's alarms. The crew scrambled to their positions, the tension in the air palpable. The unknown energy signature on the ship's instruments was growing stronger, distorting the very fabric of the ship's sensors. Graves stood frozen, eyes locked, on the screens as the anomaly grew closer, expanding in size. It wasn't just a gravitational anomaly, it was something more, something that felt alive. Suddenly, a ripple passed through the ship. The walls shook, and for a brief moment, the lights flickered and turned off, plunging the crew into darkness. Then, just as quickly, the lights returned, casting a flickering glow over the control room. "It's here," Graves said, barely a whisper. Then the ship lurched violently, the impact sending a shockwave through the hull. Everyone aboard was thrown forward, gravity shifting and twisting in impossible directions. Sullivan's voice rang out in the chaos as she scrambled to maintain control. "We're being pulled toward it," she shouted. "Ether, what are we dealing with?" The AI's voice responded, but it was heavily garbled, as though fighting against an overwhelming interference. Entity identified, unknown, impossible classification, gravitational anomaly, not of this universe. A strange, deep rumble echoed through the ship, reverberating in the bones of the crew. The energy readings on the screen spiked to dangerous levels, and an unnatural cold settled over the observation deck. "We can't fight this," Graves said, the reality of their situation settling in. "We need to find out what this thing is. We have to understand it." The ship was helpless, caught in the gravitational web of this entity. The strange fluctuations in time and space around them continued to grow, pulling the Artemis ever closer to the unknown force. The crew could feel it now, a tugging at the very core of their being, as if something was trying to reach out and connect with them. "Can we escape?" Commander Holt asked, his voice strained with fear. Graves shook his head. "It's too late, but we might be able to communicate with it. If we can understand its nature, maybe we can make it stop." "Communicate?" Holt's voice was tinged with disbelief. "Are you saying we can talk to it?" Graves nodded, his eyes locked onto the pulsing energy emanating from the entity. "If it's truly alive, as I suspect, then yes. But we need to do it quickly." The strange energy was growing more intense, filling every corner of the ship. The crew could feel it now, as though the air itself was charged with a potent force. The walls of the Artemis vibrated with an eerie hum, and the very fabric of reality seemed to bend around them. "Prepare for an encounter," Graves muttered, his fingers dancing over the control console, trying to pull together any data they had on this thing. "This may be our only chance to survive." The Artemis continued to drift toward the entity, its instruments barely functioning as they were subjected to incomprehensible fluctuations in space-time. Then it happened. The ship's communication systems crackled to life, the distortion clearing enough for them to hear a voice, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to reverberate not only through the speakers, but through their very minds. "Who dares intrude upon the fold?" The voice echoed, both alien and familiar, as though it existed in all places and none at all. Captain Sullivan stumbled backward, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What is that?" "It's speaking to us," Graves said, his voice barely above a whisper. It knows we're here." The voice continued, the words pressing in on their consciousness, sending waves of terror and awe through every member of the crew. "You do not belong here. You are but a fleeting whisper in the vastness of time and space." The ship lurched again as the voice seemed to grow louder, more present. The strange entity had taken notice of them, and now it was communicating directly, in ways that no human mind was prepared to comprehend. "What are you?" Graves finally managed to ask, his voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. The entity's response was both cryptic and terrifying. "I am the fold, the space between the spaces, the silence between the moments. I exist outside of your understanding, beyond the limits of your reality." "Beyond our reality?" Sullivan repeated. Are you a god?" A pause. Then the voice responded, its tone deepening. "I am not a god. I am a fold in the fabric of existence. I am the keeper of all that lies between the universes." Graves felt his heart race as the implications of this statement washed over him. If the fold was truly the space between realities, then it had knowledge far beyond their understanding. It had seen everything, every universe, every version of reality that had ever existed. "Can you show us?" Graves asked, his voice barely audible. "Can you show us the true nature of the multiverse?" The fold's voice seemed to ripple in response, sending a wave of unease through the crew. "What you seek is not for your eyes to see. Some knowledge is too great for fragile minds." Suddenly the ship was hit by a wave of intense energy, the crew gritting their teeth as the ship shuddered under the strain. It felt as if the fold was testing them, pushing them to the edge of their endurance. "You have come seeking answers," But you have not prepared yourselves for the truth. Graves's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Before the entity could respond, the Artemis was torn from its current path. The ship spiraled out of control, pulled by a force so immense that even the crew couldn't make sense of it. As they tumbled through the strange dimensional rift, the universe seemed to fracture around them, as though they were slipping through multiple layers of reality. Through the disorienting chaos, Graves could hear the Fold's final words echoing in their minds. The truth is not what you expect. It will consume you, and when you see it, you will never return the same. The Artemis was now caught in the heart of the Fold, its crew trapped between the layers of reality, unable to discern what was real and what was an illusion. The ship's once stable systems were now a distorted mess of static and fractured signals. Yet, through all the chaos, Graves and the others could still feel the presence of the Fold, like a shadow hovering over them. "Where are we?" Captain Sullivan asked, her voice shaky. "What is happening to us?" "We're in the heart of the Fold," Graves answered, his mind racing. "This is what lies between the universes, a place where reality itself bends and warps. If we're not careful, we could be lost forever, trapped in a loop of infinite realities. And if we do nothing," Holt asked, "we die, all of us." A chill ran down their spines. The Fold was not just a place, it was alive, and it was toying with them. But there was something deeper here, something that even Graves couldn't understand. "We have to find a way out," Graves said, his voice determined. "We must reach the center of this chaos. The Fold has shown us the truth, but it has also warned us. If we stay, we risk losing everything we know, even our very minds." And so, the crew of the Artemis was left with a choice. To continue their journey into the unknown, risking their sanity and their lives for the ultimate truth, or to attempt to return to the universe they once knew, assuming it was even possible. But there was no turning back. The Artemis drifted, deeper into the heart of the Fold, its systems failing one by one, as if the very universe was rejecting their presence. The crew could feel the presence of the entity all around them now, as if the Fold itself was watching them, waiting for them to make their final choice. Time had become meaningless. The ship's clocks had long since stopped, and even Ether's once perfect calculations were reduced to nothing more than jumbled equations. Every motion of the ship seemed to distort reality, the space around them bending in ways that made no sense. "We need to make a decision," Captain Sullivan said, her voice strained. "The Fold is breaking us apart. We can't stay in this place forever." Dr. Graves stood motionless at the control panel, his mind racing. What he had learned in the last few hours was beyond comprehension, but it also carried a heavy weight. The truth the Fold had hinted at was unlike anything he could have imagined. It was beyond their grasp, beyond their ability to understand fully, and yet it was the one thing that could change everything. "If we push further into the Fold, we risk losing our minds entirely," Graves said quietly, his fingers brushing the data pad. "The truth of the multiverse is not just knowledge. It is a power that can destroy entire realities. It exists beyond time, beyond the very fabric of space itself." "Then why are we still here?" Commander Holt asked, his voice laced with confusion and fear. Graves turned to face the crew, his expression unreadable. "Because there is something we need to understand. The Fold, the entity that governs it, has shown us the limit of our universe. But there is more. We have seen the truth of existence, a glimpse of what lies outside our own reality. But there's something I've realized." Sullivan's gaze was fixed on him, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and uncertainty. "What are you saying, Graves?" Graves took a deep breath, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. "We're not meant to understand it. No one is. The Fold was never meant to be crossed. We weren't supposed to find it, and we certainly weren't meant to learn the truth. But we've crossed the line, and now we must decide. Do we leave, knowing the truth is out of our reach, or do we risk everything for knowledge we can never truly possess? Holt stepped forward, his expression hardened. And if we stay, what happens to us? Graves stared at the swirling void beyond the ship's observation window, a strange sadness in his eyes. We will never leave. The fold doesn't just hold knowledge, it consumes all who seek it. We will be trapped here, lost between the layers of reality, our minds fractured beyond repair. We won't be able to tell what's real anymore. Sullivan closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the gravity of the situation. And if we leave, we may never be the same, Graves said softly. The truth has already changed us. But we will still be ourselves, still human, and that's something we can hold on to. There was a long silence as the crew looked at one another, the decision weighing heavily on them. The fold was both a gift and a curse. It held the answers to the deepest questions of existence, but it also held the power to destroy everything they knew. Captain, Graves said, finally breaking the silence, the ship is damaged beyond repair. If we don't act soon, we'll be caught in the gravity of the fold permanently. Our best option is to attempt a return, to break free from this place before we lose our way. Sullivan looked at the crew, her gaze filled with determination. Then let's go. We don't need the answers to everything, we just need to survive. With that, the crew began to work in unison, their hands moving across the consoles, attempting to reconfigure the Artemis's damaged systems. The ship groaned in protest as it fought against the pull of the fold, but the crew was relentless. Each member of the team knew that this was their last chance, their final opportunity to escape. As they fought to regain control, the fold seemed to respond, its presence intensifying, as if it were aware of their decision. The walls of the ship shook, and the temperature dropped dangerously low. The lights flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "We're almost there," Holt shouted, his voice strained. "We've got a lock on the escape trajectory. We can break free." But just as they thought they were about to escape, the fold made its final move. A massive wave of energy surged through the ship, and the Artemis was thrown violently into a vortex of pure darkness. The crew was thrown from their seats, their bodies tossed like ragdolls in the shifting gravity. The ship's systems failed completely, and for a brief moment, everything was still. And then, as if the universe itself had decided their fate, the ship was spat out of the fold. The crew found themselves drifting in the cold, silent void of space. The stars outside were still, unchanged, but the universe around them was now subtly different. The familiar constellations were shifted ever so slightly. The cosmic radiation was different, and time itself felt strange. They had crossed a boundary, one that no living being had ever crossed before. They had escaped the fold, but they were not the same. The Artemis floated silently in the vast expanse of space, its once pristine hull now battered and scarred. Inside, the crew sat in their seats, weary and broken, each member grappling with the knowledge that their journey had irrevocably altered their lives. Graves stood alone in the observation room, staring at the stars. The vastness of space had never seemed more suffocating. The truth that the fold had shown them, about the multiverse, about existence itself, was too great to fully understand, but it had changed them nonetheless. Captain Sullivan entered the bar room, her footsteps soft against the metallic floor. She stood beside Graves, looking out at the stars. "We made it out," she said quietly. "Yes," Graves replied, his voice distant, "but not unchanged." "I think we were never meant to understand the fold," Sullivan said. "We sought the truth, but some things are too dangerous to know." Graves nodded. "Maybe we were right to turn away. But I can't forget what we saw, what we touched. The truth was out there, and it will always be with us, even if we can't fully comprehend it." Sullivan looked at him, her expression unreadable. "What now?" Graves paused, the weight of the universe pressing down on him. "Now, we go back home. But we'll carry the secrets of the void with us, always. And we'll never forget what we learned, and what we lost." As the Artemis drifted back toward the known universe, the crew knew that their journey had ended, but the secrets they had uncovered would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The fold would always be out there, waiting, its mysteries hidden in the depths of space, a silent reminder of the cost of seeking the ultimate truth, and the crew of the Artemis, forever changed by their journey, would carry that knowledge with them, through every step they took in the universe and into the unknown.